And I have a bad back, so I'll probably end up sitting as long as I can, and then I'll get up and I'll move around, because I'm not one to stand still at all. Like, I hate sitting. All right, so I know a little bit about your class, but I'm really curious more about all of you before I get started. So can we just go around? I understand this is business. I'm assuming you're all business majors. Is anyone not a business major at this point?
You can define accounting as not business. I'm doing accounting.
Oh, there's,
major.
yeah, we all do accounting, right? You are very valuable, by the way, so. Okay, and tell me a little bit more about, if you know specifically what you want to do with your degree. Can we just sort of go around and you can tell me what your dream job is, like biggest thinking about what do you want to do long down the road? That sort of helps me create the roadmap in which I'm going to talk to you. So I'm going to start with you. Do you know what you want to do?
Yeah, so I would say I'm going into marketing, right? So my dream job would probably be doing something in PR or working for a company that is sustainable in that sense. Preferably out of the country, just to get more of a culture shock.
Okay.
I took a business class in London, so I got a feel of what it was like to kind of do that internationally. And I think that would be something that I would be looking forward to.
Okay. Do you know specifically what country you'd want to go to, or region? Or
probably Spain.
Okay.
I think Spain is cool.
Okay, excellent. Yeah.
Right now, I'm going to marketing, but I think I'm going to switch to radiology.
Oh, goodness.
Just deciding on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Sure, yeah.
So I am currently a business management major. I own and operate my own toxin-free cleaning service and have for 2 years, but I hope to open quite a few more businesses and hopefully be financially like free by like latest 40s, but
Okay.
I'm shooting for 30.
Love that. Okay, so when I started working, I immediately thought of what my exit plan was gonna be, like retirement. And I have been working towards retirement. Like, I love what I do,
Yeah,
but I'm gonna be fully retired by the time I'm 50, and I love that.
that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. You.
I'm an accounting major, so I think
Okay.
general goal right now is to become a CPA, but really I'd like to find something related to accounting along the way
Yeah.
and do that, but the
Great.
CPA is a good tip.
Okay. You, sir.
I'm a business major. I don't know what I want to do with my degree yet, but I play drums in a band and I want to use my business degree for whatever. If it ends up being something bigger, then
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to do?
So I want to help small businesses in their accounting, as well as help people with their personal finances and things like that.
Excellent. Good. You, sir.
I'm not too sure what I want to do. I'm just thinking of business, but I'd like to probably get to like some realm of consulting,
Okay.
probably technology related in the future, I imagine.
Okay. Excellent.
I'm a business major and I don't know exactly what I want to do, probably something with finance or accounting. I'm actually really good with numbers, but I don't know if that's what makes me happy.
Got it.
I'm a business major and I really have no idea what
Okay.
I'm gonna do with.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm going for business management, and the goal is to import food items from Africa to be
Okay.
able to strengthen the cultural ties.
What part of Africa? Because I always say Africa's a continent, not a country.
Right, it is, and
So,
it's huge.
yeah.
Specifically right now, it's more in the Ghana area.
Okay.
They're kind of their own little, I say colony, but their own little culture there.
Yeah.
And we have family ties that link back to there. But from there, it could branch out to other areas too.
Have you started that importing yet?
Me personally, no.
Okay.
The family ties that I have, they're experiencing with some stuff. They've done some into Canada.
Okay. Okay.
So. and they're
Okay,
trying to
so
work
you've
out
got the
kinks.
connections over there and they're already
So-
straight.
My role is the management part. I do the paperwork, I'll do all that kind of, they can figure out the physical part, I figure.
Perfect.
I'm studying accounting as well, not quite sure what to do.
I'm studying business management. When I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Uh-huh.
Business. I was thinking about doing, car parts.
Uh-huh.
Business. I have my own business of car parts.
Okay. Okay, excellent. In the back, you just walked in. Do you want to tell me what your major is and what do you want to do with that major? Like when you graduate?
My major is marketing. And I don't know yet what I'm going to do after that.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
So I'm a business major. Currently I work for a landscaping company, and then once I graduate, I think my goal is to start my own construction business.
That is cool. Okay. So I'm Felecia Maxfield Barrett. If there's one thing that I regret in my entire life, it's that I hyphenated my last name when I got married, and I absolutely hate it because nobody knows how to say a hyphenated name. It's just Maxfield Barrett, right? And I run a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 called Utah Global Diplomacy. Who does not understand what a nonprofit is or what they do? Anybody? Okay, that's really refreshing because sometimes when I talk to chambers of commerce, I'll have business owners come up to me afterwards and they're like, yes, sir.
What's it called again?
A 50, so it's a nonprofit. Ours, Utah Global Diplomacy. And these business owners will come up to me and they're like, I didn't know that you could have paid staff. I thought you just did this all for free. And I was like, okay, let's be realistic here. I would love to do this for free. Who the hell does that? Oh, by the way, I swear, I'm sorry. Does anyone get offended with swear words?
No.
Okay. Like seriously, who can work for free, right? Like it's one thing to go out and do volunteer work, but at the end of the day, you have to pay the bills. And so as a nonprofit, my philosophy with nonprofits is we are businesses. It is simply a tax status that we fall under, right? It means that as I get money in, and I like to talk about the donations we receive and the grants that we receive as investments. The investments are what we bring in. I spend that money doing the job that I need to do, and I'll explain what we do in just a second, but you know, I rent space, I order catering, I pay for programs, I pay for staff, I pay for our office. The return on investment is a social return on investment. That is what our output is. And then we track it to determine, you know, the outputs, the outcomes, and then what is the long-term impact that we have. But we're businesses. And so last year in 2023, I was accepted to participate in the Salt Lake Community College's Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. If you do anything, whether it is accounting, whether it's running your own business, you want to be an entrepreneur, I strongly suggest taking a look at that opportunity. It's free. And I mean, there are certain requirements, but the mill has all of these other different business opportunities to help you build up your business. And then once you get to a spot where you're like, okay, I've got my business going, I don't know how to grow it. They were phenomenal in helping me work through business growth concepts, right? Which nonprofits are not taught that. So my master's is in public administration. It's nonprofit leadership. The classes that I took were like how to do social impact, right? Which is incredible, but nobody taught me how to do a budget, I know how to do tracking outputs to be able to measure impact, but like nobody taught us that. It was all like, well, let's just go change the world, kumbaya. That's not a business model, right? So I'm just gonna talk to you about my career journey and then what we do as a nonprofit organization. Please ask questions along the way. Yeah, I really would appreciate not standing up here for 45 minutes and just hearing myself talk. Yes, ma'am.
So I had a question. You mentioned the Goldman Sachs. Do you have to be like a student at a university to apply that, or can you be like still like a community college?
So you have to be a business owner.
Oh,
Yeah, you don't have to, you can be in college, you can have never gone to college, there were a few people that didn't. But the whole concept is that you're a business owner and that you've grown it to a certain spot where now you need to scale up the work that you're doing.
Okay.
But I highly recommend checking, and so it's ran by the Mill, which is part of Salt Lake Community College. It's at the Sandy campus. Or I guess it's the Miller campus,
Yeah.
right? Because they do have other programs available. Another program that I would strongly suggest is through the Utah Microloan Fund. Especially for young women, they have a program that is essentially taking like concept business ideas. You can have done nothing other than say, I want to do this business, and then they help you develop that business plan. And then they also talk about like, how do you grow your capital through various financial needs, whether it's a loan, whether it's investment, whether it's, you know, you're creating a service that you spend. Yeah, so I'm born and raised in American Fork. I did not travel far beyond that home place. The furthest I went to school was Southern Utah University. And when I was in high school, my parents wanted me to do better than them. Like most good parents do, right? Did your parents ever say, okay, this is where I want you to go after high school? How many people had their parents say something like that? Okay, a few, right? For my parents, doing better than they did in high school meant to not get pregnant in high school and to graduate, right? That's where the bar was set. And so, and in my entire family, cousins, aunts on both sides, I was the first one to say, well, what happens after high school? Everybody told me at that time, if you graduate from high school, you go to college, right? And so this is back in the 90s. I packed up my little Ford Festiva, it's a little roller skate car that I don't think they make anymore. And I drove the 3 hours to Cedar City, and I went onto the campus to find an advisor, a school advisor. And I said, okay, I'm in college, now what do I do? And she just looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I told her, I said, you know, I know that I was accepted into this college, but I thought all I had to do was just show up and you're gonna help me find a job because I can't pay for college. I had no idea that, like, I thought you found a job through the college and that's how you paid for it. I have no place to live and I haven't registered for classes. And so she was so kind and spent, I think it was like 4 hours helping me find an apartment, helping me get a job, filling out student loan papers, registering for classes. And this is the day before school starts, right? Yeah. The day before school starts, let me tell you, the classes that I got were like, you know, 18th century Chinese history. Had no idea about that. And I remember she enrolled, oh my God, she enrolled me in a level 400 creative writing class. Now I had just graduated from high school and I'm pretty arrogant as a person. I'm like, sure, I can take a level 400 writing class. And the first week I was there, the professor pulled me aside and he was like, why are you in my class? Like, you are not ready to take an advanced writing class. And I talked to him and he explained the level 100, 200, 300, 400. And I was like, oh, okay. It was a really humbling moment. And I remember talking to him and saying, look, I have to keep your class because there's no other class available. And if I don't keep your class, I'm going to lose my student loan to go to college this semester. And he was so kind, and there's such a difference between being nice and being kind, right? They are mutually exclusive. You can be nice and not kind. I mean, we see it all the time, right? People are nice to your face, but then they go and turn around and they're behind your back. But there are people who are not nice, but do kind actions. And he was not nice, for sure. He really scared me and intimidated me. But he was very kind because he put me on a pass fail and I passed. I have no idea how I passed. I think he was just like, let's just get this girl out. And I remember the last day of class, he was like, you know, don't ever do that again, you know, educate yourself, figure it out. And, you know, but I want to see you in my class again when you're ready to take a level 400 class. I didn't, because I didn't want to go. I didn't know what I was gonna do when I was in Cedar City. I stayed there a year. And yeah, and so it was a really scary experience. I stayed there a year. I came back up to Utah County, went to UVU, it was UVSC back in the day. Got a ton of credits, enough that I knew that I needed an associate's degree, but nobody told me I should actually apply to get an associate's degree. And then I transferred up to the U and I like lost so many credits because it was just credit transfers instead of degree transfers. So yeah, so then I ended up meeting a guy, right? We dated and his mom worked for Department of Workforce Services. And she came to me and said, if you get a job with DWS, they will pay for your tuition. I said, great, because that's really what I needed. Nobody, like I would work for a semester or two, go to school for a semester. So like by the time this all happened, I think I was about 6 years after graduating. And I said, great, if somebody can pay for my college, then I can do the rest. I can buckle down and do the rest. And so, the problem with Department of Workforce Services is they would pay for your college, but in order to work there, you had to have a bachelor's degree. Okay, does anyone see the problem with that? Right? So essentially they're like, yeah, we'll pay for your college, but you already have to have gone to college, right? And I went into the now that I'm like saying this story out loud, I realize that I've done a lot of like pleading and begging and like asking for mercy in my life. But I went into the director of this department. I had gotten a temporary job in their unemployment office, the seasonal job. And I was trying to get on as a full-time person. And I went into that department's director and I was like, please give me a job so that I can go to school and get a bachelor's degree. And I promise you, I will stick around. I will do great things for the department. And, you know, again, through kindness, you know, the perfect opportunity to work for the unemployment office opened up. I think they made the job recruitment specifically for me. Because it was like an internal recruitment. We're only going to post it between the hours of 12 to 1, right? And then it's going to close. So I applied and I got it. And then my college was paid for. And then I buckled down and I got my degree. Now, the other problem is like I went to the University of Utah with all of my transcripts. And I again went into an advisor's office and I was like, okay, help me put this puzzle together. What is the quickest degree I can possibly get with all these credits I have? And she said, anthropology.
Oh, gosh.
Right? Yeah. Does anyone know what anthropology is? I'm sure you all had to have taken an anthropology class.
It's not my favorite.
What is it?
World culture, understanding languages, all that jazz.
Yeah, it's understanding cultures, human behavior.
Yeah, other cultures and human behavior. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I originally was gonna be an archaeologist and then I changed my mind. Because by that time I had gotten married and my husband was like, I don't really want you to be away for 10 months out of the year going on digs. And I was like, yeah, I sort of like you too, so I'll stick around. So I went the cultural path and I went through ethnography, which is embedding yourself in cultures to understand their behaviors, to tell stories. Yes, ma'am.
Do you feel that all that was kind of meant to be, like going through all that, because you had mentioned that before that you were kind of looking into something else. And then with all your credits combined, the only thing that you could do was anthropology.
Yes.
So you like think it's too much of a coincidence, or do you regret some of those things that you?
That's a really good question. And I don't know the answer to it, because I don't know if like, and had they said, oh, you can get a business degree, or you can get a theater degree, like would I be an actress and stuff, right? It definitely set up the trajectory of my life, whatever that degree was. But to tie it into modern times with all of the conversation going on about student loan forgiveness, I don't know, I would have graduated from college had I not had a type of student, a tuition forgiveness by having my employer pay for my degree, right? So I just find it really ironic that those opportunities exist, but when we call it student loan forgiveness, it's like, oh no, right? Like, yeah, so that's my argument whenever anybody's like, we shouldn't forgive student loans, I'm like, but I'm here because somebody stepped in and said, we're gonna pay for your degree. So I get done graduating from college, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with an anthropology degree in Utah, right? Like that really was the reality of it. And it just so happened, that after I graduated, 2 weeks later, I go to my husband's church, and the church is Lutheran, but half of the congregation, so a congregation meeting at another time, was from Sudan, right? At the time it was Sudan, now it's South Sudan. And the choir was singing that day, and it was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. It was so rhythmic, and you could tell that there was a lot of meaning behind it. And afterwards, downstairs in the basement where they have the refreshments after church, I went up to this gentleman and I said, tell me a little bit about you, because being in a Lutheran church that has German ties, how is it that there is a group from Sudan that is here? And his name was James, and he's a wonderful person. And he said, I am a refugee from Sudan. And I said, what is a refugee? And he told me, right? And I went and I did all of this research about what is a refugee here and how do you get involved. And I had a conversation with the International Rescue Committee that was here and Catholic Community Services that was here. And I found out that Department of Workforce Services was starting a refugee specific team for food stamps, employment services, and then a refugee services office. And so I transferred over and I started, I was supervising the food stamps, Medicaid, childcare services, and I started working with refugees. And I loved it. I was like, how is it that we're here in Utah and we get to meet so many people from around the world? This is incredible. This is an incredible opportunity. So I did government contract, like I did that. I went to the Refugee Services Office where I learned how to do government contracts. And then at that time, I got my master's in public administration and I switched over to nonprofits. I quit. I went to go work for a nonprofit. Which was the best and the worst decision of my entire life. The best decision because I think there's such interesting work that can be done, like radical work that can be done through nonprofits in the most subtle way, right? Like, so an example is there was one gentleman that I met who came from Iraq, who was the official artist of Saddam Hussein, right? Like, how the heck does somebody like that end up here in Utah? And he didn't speak English, and so we put him through an English work program. And then he's like, well, I'm a artist by trade. I don't want to go work here. I want to go back and I want to do art, right? And so we worked with the University of Utah to get him into these classes, these fine art classes, and then in internships and apprenticeships, so that he could get the degree that he needed to become, either a professor of fine arts, have some of his artwork submitted around. And so it's little like helping somebody sign up for an English class can absolutely change people's lives, right? It's so subtle, but at the same time, it's so radical, right? working for a nonprofit was the worst decision because I had this, so with nonprofits, you have to have a board of directors. It's just part of the IRS requirements to be a nonprofit. And the board chair was this gentleman who was also a lawyer. And, you know, I'm new, I've never ran a nonprofit, but I got a degree, so of course I can do it, which is why, like, they say that I'm arrogant. I'm like, yeah, of course I can do it, you know, maybe not arrogant now because I realized that everything I had learned up to that point was that I just had to be resourceful. I just had to ask questions. I had to ask people for help. Which is a really scary thing to do, but in asking people for help, I made it, right? So this board of directors president, who was a lawyer, whenever I met with him, would remind me how many billable hours I just took up of his, right? And one day I opened the mail and he had sent me an invoice for $1,200 saying that I wasted that much of his time during the month, right? It was humiliating, it was defeating, it was so humiliating to get that, right? And so I hated it. I quit. I went to go work for Wasatch Community Gardens for a few years, which I absolutely loved. Because I could take my computer and go sit in a greenhouse and do work for them. It's amazing. So I did that for a few years. And then I had a friend who was the executive director of Utah Global Diplomacy. And she was like, I had known her from the refugee resettlement community. And we had worked on another project where we had brought this international hip hop artist to Utah to do a concert. And she's like, I know that you love working with international communities. Yes.
Who's your artist?
His name is Emmanuel Jal.
Manuel Dahl.
Jal.
Jal.
Jal. Who's super cool and you should definitely check him out. Yeah. And he's done his famous song he did with Alicia Keys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he's really interesting. And he's got a really interesting story also. And so she said, yeah, let's have you continue working with the international community. I want to give you a job running our events. So I said, yes. And then 3 months later, she's like, oh, by the way, I'm leaving to Germany. I actually hired you so you would be the executive director of this nonprofit. And I was like, hell no, am I ever going to do that again? Because I had such a bad experience with the last nonprofit that I ran. But at the last minute, I applied, I went through the interview process, and then here I am 8 years later, and I absolutely love it.
And so that nonprofit was a Utah Global, was it that first nonprofit?
No,
or-
no, it was a different nonprofit.
What was it called?
I'm not gonna say.
Okay.
No, you can look up. It was Utah Refugee Coalition. That's now Utah Refugee Connection. And now, they're an incredible organization. They got the right people in the job, and they got the right board in place. They do really good work in the community. So I'm so happy about that. So glad.
Is that when you learn to do the government cases to help them?
What was that?
Under the DWFS, is that when you learned how to do the government cases and help them? What was it called again?
So the nonprofit, so I had done a few partnering works with them, but we never gave them government contracts. But the name of the nonprofit was Utah Refugee Coalition,
Connection.
which is now Utah Refugee Connection.
They asked for volunteers.
Right, yeah, and the woman who runs it is phenomenal. She's so
A
spectacular.
lot of the people are too.
Yeah. Okay, so Utah Global Diplomacy. Who has heard of us? Are not surprising whatsoever. So we have been around for 60 years, but we have been really closed with the work that we do. And under my leadership, I'm like, we do really interesting things. I want to invite everybody to participate. And what it is that we do is we build global connections in Utah, and we do it one handshake at a time, literally. What that looks like is we contract with the US State Department. Does everybody know what the US State Department is? Okay, good. To work with the embassies all around the world where they bring business owners, government officials, nonprofit leaders, faith leaders, teachers, journalists to Utah. They actually go around the United States. So we're part of a network of 86 other nonprofits. And then we work with a network of nonprofits in Washington, DC. But what we do is we submit proposals to the State Department and we say, with this particular delegation on this particular theme, business, nonprofit, and government, right? If you send them to Utah, we're gonna have them meet with these people and we're gonna have them do these cultural activities because we want them to experience Utah. And these are the objectives that we're gonna meet, right? And so they come here and literally meet other people in Utah and shake hands and sit down and share ideas and best practices. So that's a really vague, like, you guys are like, I don't understand what that means. Yes, ma'am.
So I know you studied anthropology in your college career. How do you implement what you learned about like indigenous cultures and community in that sense with the work that you are doing now?
Yeah.
By building bridges with other like
communities. That's a really good question. I'm gonna get to it in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's such a good question. So we're gonna do just a little bit of an exercise, right? Okay, so I have a delegation coming in from North Africa and the Middle East. And they're coming here on government accountability. We're gonna change the example. We're gonna say it is business and entrepreneurship, right? It's pretty vague. You are all business students. So we're gonna do an exercise. Let's do 3 professional meetings. This group is coming in. We have to do 3 professional meetings. Who in the community would you contact for these meetings?
I think at first I would contact another Sandy campus and kind of get in touch with what you were touching on about Goldman Sachs and also just their microloans. I think that would be a good first start.
Yeah.
I think it would also be a good first start to also just contact any business professionals that you have in your contact list, or just anyone that you know in that sense that can help build it. Whether it's like a construction business or any network, I think that goes into business would be a good first.
I love that. Okay. Other ideas? Who else would say this is a really good business resource?
Who are the people that we're trying to get here?
So what we know is that they're business owners or entrepreneurs from North Africa or the Middle East.
How long will they be staying here?
About 5 days.
Some sort of housing for those 5 days?
We've taken care of housing and transportation. So yeah, all of their meals are met. Yeah. Yes.
I would maybe take them to the Women's Business Center of Utah and build some bridges there. I don't know, like the demographic or the, genders of the people that are coming, but I still think it's really important to support women in business and,
Right. Yeah, that is a great resource. We love the Women's Business Center. Hey. Yes, sir.
I think like a lot of those ideas are good, but I think it's well trying to bring in bigger corporations and CEOs and directors there. Especially, I know Utah has a lot of big tech and investment groups.
Yes.
Like you got a bunch of big entertainment groups now with the jazz. So I think trying to connect them to that, because knowing their area, they're probably looking for ways to fund things, ways to invest into things, and also provide entertainment outlets. And so I think getting them connected with that, just to say, this is how you build an entertainment complex, because depending on the country, they could be developing and needing certain amenities or certain investment resources, and being able to talk to investors and investment groups be good. But in the door, I think, just to help us understand how that works.
Yeah, that is perfect. Yeah. Other thoughts? I need one more answer, so the people who are quiet. They don't know your name, so I can't call you. Okay, I'm gonna ask the person in the yellow sweater, where would you have them go?
Sure. You can just go to the meeting.
I mean, you know, we get their bios so we can figure out what businesses they have or what their entrepreneurship program is. But it's all over the place. It could be construction, it could be tech, it could be fashion, right? And so trying to put together a program that is comprehensive enough to cover all of their interests. Because sometimes absolutely be tricky. Okay, for professional meetings, like the Women's Business Center, absolutely. Like we want to be able to show how do we support women businesses in our community. And yeah, and so I think that's a really good way of saying, okay, this is how we support them. Big companies, absolutely. So I know that you were talking about Canvas earlier. Canvas is a Utah company, by the way. Yeah, and so, yeah, meeting with them or Qualtrics or doTERRA or, you know, any of those big companies, because we want them to be able to see, you know, here's how it started out of somebody's basement, but grew into this like billion-trillion-dollar company. We would probably have them meet with the World Trade Center Utah. Has anyone not heard of World Trade Center Utah? Okay, oh, and you will absolutely want to hear about World Trade Center Utah, because what they do is they help local businesses that are here in Utah connect with international markets and communities abroad. And they have a ton of grants available. And as business owners, like it's really great to have investments, but do you have to pay back your investments? Yes, right? If you get a grant, you don't have to pay it back. You just have to report how to use that grant money. So it's always better to get grants than investments or take out debt. And there's, yeah, tons of loans out there. You know, and not only do they give you loans, but they also provide supportive services to say, you are laughing. Why are you laughing?
Just something that happened earlier. It has nothing to do with this stuff.
Okay.
I wouldn't say anything,
Okay,
but I'm listening.
okay, that's all right. You can keep,
Yeah.
you can keep, that's good. But yeah, like, you know, so World Trade Center Utah. I might have them meet with some elected officials, especially like the legislators have this, oh my gosh, it's called the Beetle Committee, Business, Economic Development and Labor Committee, right? So I'm gonna have them talk to that group. Because I want them to learn about like, what are the policies, what are the laws that are in place that either support or hinder businesses, so that as they go back to their countries, they know how to navigate their own governments. Okay, so then cultural activities, they're here for 5 days, right? They're doing professional meetings. What would you do to give them a cultural experience in Utah? What would you say?
You can take them to football game.
That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea, right? Yes.
Utah Olympic Park probably.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially with the Olympics coming up in 10 years. Yeah. Other ideas.
This sounds a little silly, but I think maybe like the night scene, just to see how.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's also just like a culture shock, the music and everything.
Right? Yeah, and especially because, like, I'll be honest with you, most people who come to Utah are like, I've never heard of your state ever.
Right.
So, and we want them to leave and remember Utah in a good way. Okay, and then what would you, let's say we have to host a meal for the group. What would you feed them? Yes.
I would do just like a classic barbecue.
Okay.
I feel like to get them into the culture, I think that's always seen as like hot dogs, hamburgers. I feel like that's very American.
Yeah, yeah, and whenever we host dinners, we definitely come, we get dietary restrictions, so we know how to accommodate people that might not eat pork or not feel comfortable around alcohol, have a gluten allergy or vegan, right? So things to consider.
I would maybe cater from a couple different places that are more like hole in the wall restaurants, like Afghan Kitchen or Oak Falafel, or like different startups that are created by refugees, just because Utah is a hub for refugees, especially Salt Lake City. So something like that.
Okay, excellent. Other thoughts? Okay, I think they've had a really great stay in Utah. Okay, so here's where I'm answering your question, because as an anthropologist, it really bothered me when I started this job that like I could gather all of the quantitative information. How many people we host in a year, which is about 450 of these global leaders from all different industries. It's about 125 different countries. They end up staying a collective total of 2,500 days. Because of our work, we end up raising about $1.5 million in economic development for the state of Utah, because they're tourists, right? They're spending money on souvenirs, and we're paying for hotels, and we're eating food. So I had all of that information, which is great. But what really bothered me as an anthropologist and somebody who wants to know what happens when they go home, does anything happen? Because how do we as a nonprofit say, like, and this was the reality, we do such global change and such global good, but we had absolutely zero data to back that up, right? It drove me nuts because I'm such a data nerd. And so what we did is we started a program, and it's called Diplomacy in Action. And it's as simple as we contact our alumni who have come through our programs. And we've done this since 2016. So we're going on 8 years now. And the email says, what are you doing? And does anything that you do relate to your experience here in Utah? And we get these incredible stories, like stories of changing laws, opening up service facilities, doing more philanthropic work, starting businesses or advancing their businesses. But what was really interesting is as we're getting these stories in, you can start seeing these different themes, like, because there's, we've had a few people that are like, I did not like Utah and I will never be back. That's the reality of hosting people. But for everybody else, they're like, I love Utah. And when we really dug into why did you like Utah? Why would you come back? Why would you bring your family? You're able to figure out these themes and then do a frequency analysis over it to be able to quantify it, right? And so all of this sudden, we have this incredible story of how did we have a global impact? So we can say that we host people, but we also know that we're able to increase capacity around the world, that we're able to change laws based on laws and policies here in Utah, that we have people who understand Americans better and dispel negative stereotypes that we have here. And so, that's what I think that is what I like most about my job, is that we are able to show what is this long-term impact. Now, we only have a few more minutes left. So one thing I will say is that we do have programs that are available to young adults. So, we do a little bit of high school programming, but most of our youth programming is for young adults. And it's up to 32. It's not a hard, it's not you're 33, you can't participate. You are welcome to come in. And what the programs are is we have an International Leadership Academy that offers a citizen diplomacy certification. And what it is as you're starting to look at careers, we help you refine what the professional need is to cut through the noise and to get a job. And so something as simple as how do you write a professional email? We think we know how to do it, but what is the reality of us learning how to do it? It's a whole different skill set.
Isn't there many different ways to do it?
Yes, no.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, if I'm a professional, I do not want to read a wall of text to get down to the bottom and have it be and will you do this for me?
Yeah.
Put your ask up at the top.
Yeah. So there's not a right way to do it, but there are plenty of wrong ways to do it.
Yeah. exactly, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so it's things like that, but then the other part is we go to you and we say, what do you want to do as a job? And because we've been doing this for 60 years, our connections here in Utah, across the United States because of our network, and then because we've hosted international delegates from around the world, our network is huge. So were you the one who says you want to do international work? So when you decide what country, like Spain, you've got like 1 million connections I would love to connect you to, and even if it's a conversation that tell me your story so I can figure out what skills, tools, resources I need. The other thing is that we do offer internships and fellowships. So as a college student, if you want to get an internship, get that practical skill, and we pay you for it, right? If there's anything that you leave today thinking about, it is don't take an internship for free. Don't take an internship for free. Your time, your talent, your knowledge is so incredibly valuable to employers that we should be thanking you and we should be paying you. It's just as simple as that. So our internships, they range anywhere between 10 to 20 hours. We pay $15 an hour. Sometimes we're able to bump it up to about 20. And we have you do practical skills, practical work that you can put on your resume and say, I worked in a job. And again, I'm working with you very closely. I want to know, what is it that you want to do? How do I help you get connected to that? What letters do you need? What conferences do you need to attend? What certifications do you need? How do we invest in you? Because when you go out and you become the leaders of Utah, like, I'll be completely transparent. I want you to come back and be like, Felecia, you changed my life. Let me write you a check for $1 million. That has never happened yet. Our youth programs have only been around for like 5 years. So I figure like I have another 20 years before that will happen, but it will. So yes.
How do you get involved in those internships? Like, is there a place on your website that you can like fill out an application for, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so right now I have one internship available. It's a research intern. So it's the one who's contacting the alumni to collect all the stories and write them up. If you go to our website, utahglobaldiplomacy.org, and I can't remember the menu items, but it's the first menu. It's like the about us or whatever. Down at the bottom, it says careers and internships. It's posted there. But definitely keep watching our website. We do have an International Leadership Academy newsletter that is specifically for young adults looking to connect to careers. They're posted there. They're posted on our social media. So I mean, that's pretty much it. So I took up the whole time. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Yeah. So, yeah, I truly believe the world will change for the better because of each and every one of you. Yeah. Okay.